Hello. So as we study the tragedy of Julius Caesar, we're going to first look at a summary of each act, and then we're going to focus in on the two acts that have the most excitement. So the tragedy of Julius Caesar. We see the setting is in Rome, in Italy, in about 44 BC. Julius Caesar has returned to Rome victorious over his old enemy, Pompey the Great. And here's my picture of that. Caesar has returned to Rome. Remember, Italy is shaped like a boot. And he is victorious over his old enemy, Pompey. Rest in peace, Pompey. Workmen are celebrating the victory in the streets. Two government officials who are against Caesar scold the workmen for supporting Caesar, and they break up the party. They break up the celebration. At a festival, a soothsayer, like a fortune teller, warns Caesar to beware the Ides of March. And that means March 15th. Okay, so here's my picture of that. It's my little witchy lady, my soothsayer. And she says, beware the Ides of March, which is March 15th. Oh, and here's the party. We love Caesar. And they say, stop, get out of here. So Caesar gets this warning from the soothsayer, but he ignores it. He's like, and he leaves. Two nobles named Cassius and Brutus talk about Caesar's increasing power and his popularity. Remember, the workmen are happy he won. Cassius asks Brutus to join him in a plot against Caesar. Dun, dun, dun. So the problem is starting right away. When Caesar returns, he tells his friend Mark Antony that he is suspicious of Cassius. Brutus learns that the people of Rome have asked Caesar to be king 3 times, and Caesar said no. So I have a picture for that. Be our king! Hey, be our king! And he says no. And here's Cassius saying, hey! And Brutus, see his big ear? He's listening. Later, Casca, a friend of Cassius, worries about the fierce storm that night. I mean, crazy storm in Rome. Like scary end of the world kind of storm. Cassius says the storm and other strange events are a sign, like a supernatural sign that something bad is about to happen. And, ladies and gentlemen, what do we call that? I know, we call it foreshadowing. Cassius warns that Caesar must be killed. He asked Casca to help him kill Caesar, and Cassius then plans to convince Brutus to help them. And that is Act 1. Whoa. So there's a fierce storm, lots of bad stuff happening. And the takeaway is Cassius says, let's kill Caesar. Okay, how do I get Brutus to help kill Caesar? And that's Act 1. Act 2, the tragedy of Julius Caesar. Act 2. Brutus tries to decide whether he should help kill Caesar. Finally, he decides that killing Caesar is for the good of the public, and he decides to help. And my picture of that. Here's Brutus trying to decide. No, I can't kill Caesar. He's like a dad to me. And Caesar was like a dad to Brutus. Caesar was his mentor who helped him with everything. And Brutus loved Caesar. Then he says, well, I should kill Caesar for the good of Rome because I love Rome. I love Rome more. This is Brutus deciding. And then the conspirators come and they say, hey, let's kill Mark Antony too. Brutus says no. Before the end of that scene, Portia, who is Brutus's wife, comes in and says, what's wrong, honey? Why are you so troubled? Okay, so let's see where we. Cassius and the other conspirators arrive. Cassius suggests they kill Mark Antony as well, who is a good friend of Caesar. Brutus disagrees. He says, don't kill Mark Antony. The conspirators leave. Brutus's wife, Portia, sees that Brutus is upset. Okay, the next scene, Caesar is at home with his wife, Calpurnia, and there's a severe storm. Calpurnia has dreamed that something bad will happen to Caesar, and she begs him, don't go. Do not go to the Senate on this day. And Caesar disagrees. He basically says, I'm not a coward. I'm a man. I gotta go. So here's Calpurnia, and I should have done some lightning or something. There was bad storms and bad dreams that she had, and she just knows in her heart that something's going to happen. And he says, bye, I'm not a coward, I'm a man. Okay, the last part of Act 2, Decius, who is one of the conspirators, comes to Caesar's house. He says that Calpurnia misunderstood her dream. He tells Caesar that the Senate will laugh at him if he does not go out today. And other conspirators come. Okay, so they talk him into it. Caesar plans to leave for the Senate with him. On the street, there's a man named Artemidorus, and he has a letter for Caesar. He plans to hand Caesar the letter before Caesar enters the Senate. And the letter names all of the conspirators who are trying to assassinate or kill Caesar. But it's a tragedy, right? The letter and the man get there too late. That's supposed to be a clock. He's out of time because Caesar has already entered the building. Portia, who is Brutus's wife, sends her servant to the Senate to see what is happening. Outside her house, there's a soothsayer who tells Portia that Caesar might be in danger. And remember the soothsayer, the witch-type person who's been saying, beware the Ides of March. Okay, now we have Act 3, the tragedy of Julius Caesar, Act 3. Now Caesar stands outside the Capitol. He's outside the Senate. He reminds the soothsayer that the Ides of March are here. The soothsayer tells Caesar that the day isn't over yet. So this is a soothsayer that said to him, watch out for this day. He says, hey, I'm fine. The day is here. I'm still here. And she says, the day is not over yet. Artemidorus tries again to give Caesar that letter that names the conspirators. One of the conspirators stops him by asking Caesar another question. They're conspirators. They're working together, right? Then the conspirators surround Caesar. They stab him to death. Right there in the middle of everybody. When Brutus stabs him, Caesar says, et tu, Brute, and dies. And that is probably the most famous line from the entire play. Because, again, Caesar was like a father to Brutus. He was his mentor. So, et tu, in Latin, means even you and you too, Brutus. These other jokers, yeah, I understand that they would want to kill me, but you? So, we understand that it's really his heartbreak at having this person he loves stab him that really has him give up and he dies. Okay, so here we go, my picture. So here we have them surrounding Caesar with their knives. Et tu, Brute. Okay, the conspirators wash their hands in Caesar's blood. It's really gory, guys. Like every play version I've seen of this, they just literally dip their hands in his blood. And then they enter the marketplace, like the plaza where everyone is. When Mark Antony enters, remember he's the best friend of Caesar, he pretends to agree with the conspirators, which is probably smart, or they would have killed him, right? He asks to speak at Caesar's funeral. After the conspirators leave, Antony quietly says goodbye to Caesar's body, and he asks Caesar's forgiveness. He says that there will be war in Rome. There will be civil war. And Act 3 ends with a famous set of speeches, which we will look at because it's like the best part of the play, Act 3. So Brutus gives a funeral speech, and he explains that he helped kill Caesar because Caesar was too proud and too ambitious, and he was, getting too much power, and he just wasn't going to stop. And the crowd cheers for Brutus. Yay! Thank you, Brutus, for killing him. And essentially what Brutus says is, I loved Rome more than I loved my dear mentor, father figure, Caesar. Then Antony speaks. He's clever, and he slowly uses his words to turn the crowd against the conspirators. He starts talking about all of the good things Caesar did, his good works. And Caesar did a lot. He gave to the poor. He instead of just getting rich, he would take what he had and share it with the other people of Rome. He says that Caesar even remembered the people of Rome in his will. Like when you die, you have a will that divides up the money and property you have. Later, a servant tells Antony that Octavius Caesar, Caesar's son, has arrived. Brutus and Cassius leave Rome. An angry mob kills Cinna the poet, thinking he is Cinna the conspirator. The point being that Mark Antony's words were so powerful that the crowds of people are starting to think, hey, these conspirators were wrong. They killed our hero. Let's get them. But they get the wrong person. So here's Brutus's speech. He says, I love Rome. Caesar was too proud and ambitious. In Mark Antony's speech, he says, Caesar loved you. You Romans, Caesar loved you. And he shows the will where Caesar gave away his wealth to the people of Rome. And here we have Octavius Caesar's coming, and then Cinna accidentally, the wrong Cinna, is murdered. The end of Act 3. So Act 4, we have Mark Antony, Octavius, who is like the son of Caesar, and Lepidus. They now rule Rome with a committee of 3. Call them the triumvirate because there are 3 of them. They decide who their enemies are and who will rule Rome's territories. Lepidus leaves to get Caesar's will. Antony then says he doesn't think Lepidus should rule Rome. Antony and Octavius discuss how to defeat the armies of Brutus and Cassius. So there's civil war. Mark Antony's side versus Brutus and Cassius' side. Meanwhile, Cassius and Brutus are arguing in their military camp outside of Rome. They don't want their armies to see the argument, so they go to Brutus's tent. Finally, Cassius and Brutus accuse each other of wrongdoing. So the main conspirator, Cassius, has finally got Brutus questioning him, where he's like, wait a minute, you're not a good guy. So they're accusing each other of wrongdoing. And as they get more and more angry, eventually they stop arguing, they shake hands, they become friends again, somehow. Then they learn that Octavius and Antony are approaching with their armies. Brutus convinces Cassius that their soldiers should meet the enemy in Philippi, a city in Greece. Later that night, the ghost of Caesar appears to Brutus. Cool, right? The ghost comes to Brutus. The ghost says he will see Brutus in Philippi. Brutus asks his guard if they heard or saw the ghost, and they did not see anything. Brutus then orders his army to be ready early the next morning. So here we go. We've got the two lines of civil war. Brutus and Cassius' side versus Antony and Octavius' side. So it's war, civil war. So Brutus and Cassius are arguing, and they find out that Antony and Octavius are coming. They have a triumvirate where they're controlling Rome as three people in charge, but they're fighting the other guys. Then Brutus has this dream that in Philippi, Caesar will see him there. Caesar's ghost tells him that. I made it like a Pac-Man ghost, sorry. And we're going to end with battle. That is the excitement of Act 4. Okay, so the conclusion of the tragedy of Julius Caesar, Act 5. Okay, so we're still in battle. Octavius, Antony, and their armies are waiting for Brutus and Cassius' armies. Octavius, Antony, Brutus, and Cassius meet, and they start insulting each other. Oh, you're this, oh, you're that. Octavius then says they should start fighting. During the battle, Brutus sends a messenger to Cassius. He tells Cassius to battle with Octavius' nearby army. He is sure that Octavius' army is weak. Cassius hears incorrect bad news about the battle. In despair, he asks the messenger to stab him with the sword used to kill Caesar. These Romans, huh? So Cassius misunderstands the message, and he basically kills himself with some help. Titinius, Cassius' officer, also kills himself. In Roman culture, it was more noble and more respected to kill yourself than to fail. And we wonder why Rome fell. Okay. Brutus now enters. He has defeated Octavius' army. He finds Cassius and Titinius dead. He leaves to enter the battle again. Two trusted soldiers, young Cato and Lucilius, go with him. Cato is killed in battle. Lucilius is taken prisoner. He tells Antony that Brutus will never be taken alive. Brutus returns from battle. He's tired. He's defeated. He's just seen all these people he cares about killed or captured. He asks 3 of his men to kill him, and each of them refuse. No, I'm not going to kill you. No. Brutus tells them he saw Caesar's ghost, and he begs them again to help him die. One of the men just agrees to hold a sword. Brutus runs into the sword and dies. Wow. Okay, so Antony praises. So Antony and Octavius come over and they see this, right? And all these dead people, their enemies, the leaders of their enemy side are now dead. So Antony's standing over Brutus and he says good things about him. He says that the other conspirators killed Caesar out of envy. They were jealous. They were haters. But Brutus was the only one who thought killing Caesar was for the good of all the people. Okay, so here we have them, they're saying insults to each other. Okay. Running into his sword. Hold my sword. I will kill myself. I'll run into my sword. Okay. And here we have the ghost of Caesar. Brutus is dead. And Mark Antony is saying he was really the #1 Roman. Now, notice that most of the acts of the tragedy of Julius Caesar are mostly about Brutus. And many people say Julius Caesar isn't really the hero of the tragedy of Julius Caesar. Brutus is. that Brutus is basically the main character, and it is still a tragedy, the tragedy of Brutus, who went from trusted, loved protege of Caesar to his betrayer, to the cause of civil war in Rome, and he loved Rome, but he caused civil war, to finally committing suicide and failure. So the tragedy of Julius Caesar is really the tragedy of Brutus.